the super sign, Israel being God's time clock. And I want to introduce this clip of you. Here you talk about the remarkable preservation of the Jewish people because no other group has been scattered and then regathered. My goodness, the language is preserved throughout 2,700 years of dispersion. The miracle of this, as you say, I'm using your terms, is mind-boggling.
Let's take a look at these two, and let's begin with the preservation of the Jewish people. Well, the preservation of the Jewish people is so remarkable, it is so historically stunning that its uniqueness has been noted and commented on by a great variety of people. No other people in all of history have been scattered all over the world and been regathered back to their original homeland. Consider, for example, the great historian Arnold Toynbee. He fully recognized the unusual nature of the Jewish experience. He wrote a 10-volume work on the study of history. And in that work, he traced the rise and fall of 26 civilizations, and he ended by noting that the Jewish people were the only people who have ever lived that did not fit into his scheme of history. Toynbee ended up classifying the Jews as fossils of history because they seemed to be frozen in time. He said they refused to be assimilated into the soup of humanity. They were determined to keep their separate identity. Leo Tolstoy, the great Russian novelist, expressed his awe over the preservation of the Jewish people with these words. He wrote, "What is the Jew? What kind of a unique creature is this, whom all the rulers of all the nations of the world have disgraced and crushed and expelled, persecuted, burned, drowned, and who, despite their anger and their fury, continued to live and to flourish? The Jew is the symbol of eternity." To get a feel for how preposterous the preservation of the Jews is from a human perspective, I want you to consider something that this man wrote, Rabbi Dov Greenberg. He is the executive director of Chabad, which is the Jewish Hasidic movement. And here's what he wrote. Interesting. He said, "Imagine we could travel back in time and say to the great Pharaoh of Moses' time, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that one of the nations alive today will survive and change the moral landscape of the world. The bad news is it won't be yours. It will be that group of Hebrew slaves out there building your glorious temples, the children of Israel. Nothing," he writes, "would sound more outrageous. The Egypt of Pharaoh's time was the greatest empire of the ancient world, brilliant in its arts and sciences, formidable in war. The Israelites were a landless people, powerless slaves. Indeed, already in antiquity, those in power believed the Israelites were on the verge of extinction." The preservation of the Jewish people throughout 2,700 years of dispersion is mind-boggling. I want you to keep in mind that they were dispersed to over 130 nations worldwide, and they were brutally mistreated wherever they went. Will Varner, a professor at the Master's College, has expressed it this way. He wrote, "No nation in the history of the world has ever been exiled from its land, lost its national existence and language, and then returned as a people to that identical homeland and even revived its ancient language. No nation, that is, except one, the nation of Israel. No nation in the world has ever been exiled and brought back like that." Let's take a look now at the second miracle that enabled the reestablishment of the state of Israel. And that is the promise that in the end times, God would regather the Jewish people in unbelief from the four corners of the earth. There are many such prophecies. In fact, their regathering in unbelief is one of the most prolific prophecies in the Hebrew Scriptures. Let's just take a look at four of the many, many prophecies about the regathering of the Jewish people in unbelief. And the first one is sort of mind-boggling. It's taken from Jeremiah chapter 6. And this I want you to listen to very carefully because this is really unbelievable prophecy. It says, "Therefore, behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when it will no longer be said, as the Lord lives, who brought up the sons of Israel out of the land of Egypt, but They will say instead, as the Lord lives who brought up the sons of Israel from the land of the north and from all the countries where he had banished them, for I will restore them to their own land, which I gave to their fathers. Folks, that's a mind-boggling thing. He is saying that when history is finished and the Jews look back on their history, they will no longer swear by the God who delivered them from Egyptian captivity, but the God who regathered them from the four corners of the earth. It is the same God. What it's saying is the Jews will consider their regathering from the four corners of the earth to be a greater miracle than their deliverance from Egyptian captivity. And you and I are living in the time when we are blessed to see this prophecy fulfilled before our eyes, and the average person sitting in a pew today has no understanding whatsoever of how important this regathering is and how the Jews look upon it themselves. It's amazing. That's what happens when you completely ignore Bible prophecy, as most churches do these days. People just don't understand the importance of what is going on around them.
But Jeremiah says that twice in his book. I was having lunch with a fellow not long ago, an older man, and we were talking about the first coming of Jesus, and he leaned across the table and said, David, wouldn't it have been great to live in Bible times? And I said, brother, we are living in Bible times right now. We're seeing prophecies thousands of years old fulfilled before our very eyes. This is an exciting time.
Right, but getting folks excited about it in the church is quite a chore.
That's true.
That's what jumped out at me in that little clip. You said the average person sitting in the pew doesn't even comprehend perhaps some of the substance of the content in this hour. And I find that tragic, and it's the biggest change in my lifetime and perhaps your lifetime as well. You need to explain why Satan hates these people as intently as he does.
He hates the Jews with a passion more than any other people on planet Earth. And the reason that he hates them so much is because they are the chosen people of God, even to this day. By that, I mean they are to be his witnesses. It was through them that he gave the Word, the Bible. It is through them that he sent the Messiah. He has promised in both the Old Testament and New Testament that in the end times he's going to bring a great remnant of them to salvation. And when Jesus returns, that he's going to regather all the Jews on planet Earth who are believers, and he's going to make of them the greatest nation in the world, and all the blessings of God will flow out through the Jewish people. And Satan doesn't want to see any of that happen, so he is determined to annihilate the Jewish people. Jesus said he would not return until the Jewish people say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So Satan says, hey, I can stop the return of Jesus by annihilating the Jewish people. He tried to do that in the Holocaust. He's going to try to do it again in the tribulation. He'll be even more successful because in the tribulation he's going to kill 2/3 of the Jewish people, according to Zechariah. But 1/3 will make it to the end, and that third will look upon him whom they pierced and weep and wail and mourn and receive Jesus as their Messiah to the everlasting glory of God. God has never given up on the Jewish people. He never will. And he's going to bring a great remnant to salvation. One of God's greatest miracles in regathering them is just written off as an accident of history. But it's a very common expression that you find in the church today by those who are caught up in this evil of replacement theology.
We need to explain what replacement theology is. A simple definition is the church has replaced Israel.
Very interesting, too, is that nearly all of them claim that they're not anti-Semitic.
Sure.
They say we're anti-Zionists. I have a statement in this chapter in which I say anti-Zionism is just anti-Semitism in new, sophisticated clothes, whereas anti-Semitism sought to drive out the Jews from the lands where they lived. Anti-Semitism refuses to accept their right to live in their own land. It's just a new form of anti-Semitism.
We'll play another clip here. It happens to be of you again, and this is so true. God has put Israel in the hearts of the Jewish people. Then you close talking about amillennialism, and I think we need to come back and at least address that for a minute or two, because honestly, a lot of my listeners and your followers as well, they may have grown up in amillennial churches or maybe attending them now, and I think they need to know why this would inhibit them from even understanding some of the things we're talking about.
Did you know there's a psalm that says that God has put in the hearts of the Jewish people the highway to Zion? It's in their hearts. And what happened is at the beginning of this century, God touched that. And all over this world, Jews began to say, we need to go home. We need to go back. The Ethiopian Jews said, we need to go back. All over the world, just simultaneous, Jews began to say, we got to go back home. We got to go back home. God was motivating them because in their hearts is the highway to Zion. Another of these prophecies about the end time is found in the book of Ezekiel in chapter 36 about the regathering in unbelief. And here's how it reads. I will take you from the nations, gather you from all the lands, and then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. Now notice, first he's going to regather them. Then they're going to come to belief. So they're being regathered in unbelief. Verse 26, moreover, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh, and I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will be careful to observe all my ordinances, and you will live in the land that I gave to your forefathers. So you will be my people, and I will be your God. Well, once again, amillennials try to explain this prophecy away. They try to talk about it's talking about the church. It's amazing. More than half the commentaries written on this say this is talking about the church. Where's the church in here? I don't see the church in here. It's talking about the Jewish people and their regathering.
What is the problem with amillennialism? Why is that the predominant theology in our churches today?
Amillennialism is the belief that we're living in the millennium now, that it began at the cross and will continue until the second coming of Jesus. It is based upon a spiritualization of all of the scriptures concerning the end times. They have to be spiritualized because the Bible says point blank, Jesus is coming back to reign for 1,000 years. So you have to say, well, it doesn't mean what it says. It is an abuse of the scriptures. There's several motivations, but certainly one of them, people don't realize is anti-Semitism, because the millennial kingdom of the end times that the Bible describes is going to be a kingdom where the Jewish people will reign as the prime nation of the world, and all the blessings of God will flow through the Jewish people to the rest of the world. And the church just can't accept that. So the church says, when it talks about that, it's really talking about the church and we're the kingdom. And the problem with all that is you have to spiritualize everything. It says that the earth will be flooded with peace, righteousness, and justice during the millennium. Is that true today? Well, of course not. But they say, well, it's just relative. There would be so much more evil in the world if the Holy Spirit weren't here and the church weren't here. But since we're here, well, it's just a lot safer and a lot better than it otherwise would be. No, it says the earth will be flooded with peace, righteousness, and justice. I love a comment that Arnold Fruchtenbaum, a Messianic Jew, made about this. He said, if we're living in the millennium now, then I must be living in the ghetto area.
Well put.